My new wife demanded I use my late wife's money left for our kids on her daughters. My lesson was strict. I knew things would change when I remarried, but I never expected my new wife to go after my late wife's money. It was meant for our daughter's future, not hers. She thought she could pressure me into it. What came next would teach her a lesson she'd never forget. A single tear escaped my eye as I sat alone in the quiet living room, cradling a photo of my late wife and our 2 daughters. The picture had been taken during a summer trip to the beach, back when everything still felt whole. Edith's arms were wrapped around our girls, her smile radiant and full of joy. Her eyes sparkled with a kind of life that cancer had cruelly stolen from her far too soon. "I miss you, Ed," I whispered softly, my thumb gently caressing her face. In the picture, "The girls, they're growing up so fast. I wish you could see them now." My voice broke slightly at the end. That beach day felt like yesterday, and yet a lifetime had passed since. Everything had changed the day we lost her. I tried my best to keep things together for the girls, for myself, but most days it felt like I was simply going through the motions. Edith had always been the glue. Without her, there were cracks in everything. Just then, a soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. My mother stepped into the room, her face etched with concern. She had that look, one I'd come to recognize over the years, the one that meant she was about to say something she knew I didn't want to hear. "Charlie, honey," she began gently, stepping into the room. "You can't keep living in the past. It's been 3 years. You need to move on. Those girls, they need a mother figure." I sighed and lowered the photo frame onto the coffee table, staring at it for a few seconds before answering. "Mom, we're doing fine. The girls are getting older," she cut in, settling beside me. Her tone wasn't harsh, just firm, like she had rehearsed this speech more than once. "I know you're trying, but you're not getting any younger. What about that nice woman from your office? Gabriella?" I rubbed my temples, feeling a familiar pressure start to build in my head. "Gabby? Mom, she's just a coworker. And a single mother," she added quickly, not missing a beat. "Just like you're a single father. Think about it, Charlie, for the girls' sake." With that, she stood and left the room, leaving her words behind like a heavy mist. I sat there for a while longer, the picture of Edith still on the table, staring up at me. My mother's suggestion clung to my thoughts. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to move forward, even if the path ahead didn't look anything like the one I once imagined. 1 year later, I stood in the backyard, watching as Gabby, laughed with my daughters. She'd come into our lives unexpectedly. One conversation at work led to another, then a coffee, then dinner with the girls. Everything unfolded quickly, but it never felt forced. She had a warmth about her, and the girls had grown fond of her. Before long, we were married. It wasn't like what I had with Edith. That kind of love only happens once in a lifetime. But this was comfortable, easy. It was good, or at least it seemed good enough. "Dad, watch this!" my youngest shouted, breaking into my thoughts, as she attempted a clumsy cartwheel across the grass. I clapped and cheered, doing my best to mask the ache behind my smile. "Great job, sweetie." Gabby walked up beside me, her arm slipping through mine like it belonged there. She smelled of lavender and sunscreen. "They're wonderful girls, Charlie. You've done an amazing job with them." I nodded, forcing myself to accept the compliment, though guilt stirred deep in my chest like it always did when she praised my parenting. "Thanks, Gabby. I'm trying my best. You're such a stellar parent. Your kids must be so lucky," she added with a bright smile. We headed inside as the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the living room. Despite the warmth of her words, something about the way she'd said it unsettled me. It lingered in the back of my mind like a faint alarm bell, but I brushed it off. I had made a decision to build something new, and I wasn't going to ruin it by overthinking. Later, as I rinsed the dishes and the girls played upstairs, Gabby came into the kitchen. There was something different about her expression. Calm, but calculated. Her smile was still there, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Charlie," she said, her voice smooth, almost too smooth. "We need to talk about the girls' trust fund." I froze, my coffee mug halfway to my lips, the steam curling into the quiet of the kitchen. Gabby stood across from me, arms folded, her tone sharp and eyes cold. I hadn't expected this. Not now, not like this. "What trust fund?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though the words felt heavy in my mouth. Gabby rolled her eyes, dropping the cheerful mask she wore so often. The shift in her expression was sudden, and in that moment, I saw something different in her, something I hadn't seen before. "Don't play dumb," she said, almost scoffing. "I heard you on the phone with your financial advisor. Edith, Left quite a nest egg for the girls, didn't she? My stomach sank. I had never talked about the trust fund with her. Not because I was hiding something, but because I never thought it would matter. It was Edith's final gift to our daughters, a future she knew she wouldn't be there to see. That money's for their future, I said slowly, setting my mug on the counter. College, when they're ready to start their lives. Exactly, Gabby snapped, cutting me off. And what about my girls? Don't they deserve the same chances? Or do only your kids get to dream big? I tried to choose my words carefully, but everything in me wanted to push back. Of course your daughters matter, I said. I care about them. But that money, it's Edith's legacy. It belongs to her children. Her eyes narrowed. The warmth that once drew me in now replaced with something colder. Her children. Right. So that's how it is. We're supposed to be a family, but the lines are still drawn, aren't they? That's not what I meant, I said quickly. I've treated your girls like my own from the beginning. Gabby let out a bitter laugh. Treated them like your own? Please, if you really saw them that way, you wouldn't be hoarding money for your biological kids while mine get nothing. The kitchen felt smaller somehow, the air heavier with every word. Her voice echoed around the room, and I felt like I was being pulled into a place I didn't want to go. I stood still, trying to keep calm, trying not to say something I couldn't take back. I took a breath and forced myself to speak. That fund isn't mine to touch, Gabby. It was set up for my daughters. It's not about favoritism. It's about a mother's wish for her children's future. That's when her voice dropped lower, laced with something close to venom. So that's it? Your dead wife's wishes matter more than your living family? The words hit like a slap, and for a second I couldn't speak. I stared at her, stunned, not just by the cruelty of her words, but by the fact that she had said them at all. I could feel my jaw tighten as anger slowly rose to the surface. Don't you dare speak about Edith like that, I said, my voice low and firm. This conversation is over. That money is not up for debate, period. Gabby's face flushed red with frustration. Her eyes burned with anger. You're impossible, she shouted. How can you be so stubborn? I didn't answer. I couldn't. I was still staring at her, trying to piece together how we had ended up here. The woman in front of me, the one demanding a piece of something that wasn't hers, felt like a stranger. So different from the caring, gentle person I had invited into our lives. Still, I forced myself to stay calm. If I argued, it would only get worse. And I needed time to think, to plan, to protect what mattered. So I gave her what she wanted, or at least made it seem that way. Fine, I said, forcing a nod. You're right. I'll sort this out tomorrow, okay? Her entire demeanor changed in an instant. Her expression lit up, the anger slipping, away like it had never been there. Really? You mean it? I nodded again. I watched as her lips curled into a satisfied smile, smug, victorious, like she had finally won something she'd been chasing for a long time. Without another word, she turned and walked out of the room. The slam of the door behind her echoed through the house, sharp and final. I stood there for a moment, frozen. Then I sank into a nearby chair, my hands rubbing over my face, the weight of it all pressed down on my shoulders. Edith's memory, my daughter's future, and the trust I'd placed in someone who clearly never deserved it. Gabby had finally shown her true colors, and now I knew, without a doubt, that something had to change. I couldn't ignore it any longer, couldn't keep brushing her behavior aside in the hope that things would get better. It was time to draw a line, a real one, not out of anger, but out of duty to Edith's memory and to the daughters we had brought into the world together. The next morning, I waited until I knew Gabby was nearby. She was in the kitchen, moving about quietly, probably thinking I'd forget what had happened the night before. But I hadn't. I picked up my phone and called my financial advisor. My voice was steady but intentionally loud enough to be heard down the hallway. Yes, I'd like to set up a new account, I said clearly, keeping my eyes on the hallway entrance. It's for my stepdaughters. We'll be funding it from the joint income going forward. Right on cue, I heard her inhale sharply. Gabby appeared a second later, standing in the doorway with a look that mixed shock, confusion, and disbelief. Her face twisted as if I'd just betrayed her in the worst way possible. What are you doing? She demanded as I ended the call. I turned to face her, calm but firm. I'm creating a fund for your daughters, like you asked. We'll contribute to it together, from our shared income. Her eyes narrowed into thin slits, her tone rising with bitterness. And Edith's money, I didn't blink, remains untouched. That's non-negotiable. She stepped closer, her voice sharp. You think this solves anything? This is a slap in the face, Charlie. No, I said, holding her gaze. "This is me setting a boundary. We build this family's future together, but we don't get to take what was never ours." She jabbed a finger at my chest. "You're choosing your daughters over us. Admit it." My jaw tightened, but I didn't flinch. "I'm choosing to honor what Edith left behind for them. If you can't respect that, then maybe we do have a serious problem." Her eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't tell if it was sadness or manipulation or both. I had seen her play emotions before, and now I didn't know what to believe anymore. "I thought we were partners, Charlie," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought what was yours was mine. We are partners," I answered, my tone low and steady. "But that doesn't mean erasing the past or taking from what was never meant for us." She turned away quickly, shoulders shaking as she left the room. Whether she was crying or fuming, I didn't follow her. I'd said what needed to be said. As she disappeared down the hallway, I called after her. Unfair or not, my decision stands. The house grew colder after that day. Not physically, but emotionally. The warmth that once filled our conversations was gone. The days passed in silence, and when we did speak, our words were short, clipped, sometimes even passive-aggressive. Gabby would sometimes try to guilt-trip me with long sighs or throw in a bitter comment about how nice it must be to have money no one else can touch. Other times, she gave me the cold shoulder, disappearing into the other room with nothing more than a blank look in my direction. But I didn't give in. I couldn't. Because backing down now would mean giving up on everything I knew was right. One evening, just as the sun was beginning to set and the house had gone quiet again, I was tucking the girls into bed. Their room was warm and soft, filled with the comfort of routine. My oldest looked up at me with wide eyes, her little fingers playing with the hem of her blanket. "Daddy," she said quietly, "is everything okay with you and Gabby?" Her question stopped me in my tracks. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to keep my expression calm. "We're working through some grown-up stuff, sweetheart," I replied gently. "But don't worry, okay?" She nodded slowly, but the worry didn't leave her eyes. "We don't want you to be sad again, Daddy." That broke something in me. I wrapped my arms around her and pulled her close, holding her tightly. "I'm not sad, honey," I whispered into her hair. "As long as I have you and your sister, I'm okay. I promise. Your happiness is what matters most to me." I whispered those words softly as I kissed my daughters goodnight and gently closed their bedroom door. Their sleepy smiles and tiny hands still clinging to their blankets stayed with me as I stepped into the hallway, my heart heavy but calm. I was doing what needed to be done, for them, for Edith, and for the future she dreamed of. But my moment of quiet didn't last long. Gabby was there, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed tightly across her chest. Her expression was sharp, her gaze cold and accusing. "They're good kids, Charlie," she said. "But my girls deserve just as much." I let out a tired sigh. Her words weren't new. We'd had this conversation more times than I cared to count, and yet, here we were again. Nothing had changed. "They are good kids," I said gently. "All 4 of them, and they all deserve our support." But we agreed. "Support?" She cut in with a bitter laugh. "That trust fund would have been real support, but you just had to play the hero for your precious Edith, didn't you?" Her voice echoed through the hallway, full of resentment. I kept my voice calm. Even though the words stung, I wasn't trying to play hero. I was trying to do what was right. "This isn't about being a hero," I said. "It's about respect. Edith set that money aside for our daughters, for their education, their future, their lives. I'm honoring that." She narrowed her eyes, stepping closer. "And what about my daughter's future? Or does that not matter to you?" I inhaled deeply, grounding myself. These conversations always pushed me to the edge, but I had to stay level-headed, for the girls, if not for us. "It does matter," I said firmly. "That's why we started a new fund. One for them, too. One we're building together." But she shook her head, scoffing like I'd just said something ridiculous. "That's just your way of keeping me quiet," she spat. "It's not the same, and you know it." She wasn't wrong about one thing. It wasn't the same. But not because I didn't care about her daughters. It wasn't the same because the source of that other fund wasn't ours to touch. It was Edith's last wish for her children, a legacy, a promise. We stared at each other for a long second. I saw the storm in her eyes, the fury, the entitlement, the disbelief that I wouldn't bend to her demands. And I knew she could see something in me too, the steel, the resolve, the understanding that this was a line I would never cross. This battle wasn't over. I could feel it in my bones. Months passed after that day. We settled into a strained routine. Quiet mornings, awkward dinners, and conversations that were more polite than warm. The arguments weren't as frequent anymore. But that didn't mean the problem had gone away. It just lingered under the surface, like a crack in glass waiting to spread. Every now and then, I'd catch her watching me. I could feel her simmering discontent whenever something reminded her of the fund, or when she saw me giving extra attention to my daughters. She never said it out loud, but I knew the resentment still lived inside her, quietly eating away at whatever was left of our connection. Then, one evening, as the sun was setting and the sky turned soft and golden, I sat in the backyard, watching all 4 girls laugh and play together. They were running through the sprinkler, their joy untouched by the tension that lived inside the house. For a moment, I felt something close to peace. Gabby came up beside me, her arms crossed again, her face unreadable. "They look happy," she said quietly. I didn't take my eyes off the children. "They do." She shifted her weight, then looked at me, her tone colder. "But it could have been better, for all of them, if you'd just listened to me from the beginning." I turned to meet her gaze. I wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of having to explain something that should have been clear from the start. "No, Gabby," I said. "It wouldn't have been better. It would have been unfair. Unfair to Edith, unfair to my daughters, unfair to the truth." She opened her mouth to respond, but I raised my hand, stopping her. "This discussion has been over for months," I said gently but firmly. "You can be upset. You can feel what you feel. But I'm not changing my mind." She stood there for a few moments, then turned and walked back into the house, her steps sharp and fast. I watched her go, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief wash over me. Sadness because I had hoped for better, relief because I knew I had done the right thing. Gabby had come into our lives full of energy and charm, but somewhere along the way, she'd let entitlement and jealousy cloud her judgment. She thought she could rewrite the rules, push her way into a legacy that wasn't hers. But she learned something important, something hard. I wasn't a pushover. I wasn't going to fold just to keep the peace. And I definitely wasn't going to betray Edith's memory, no matter who asked me to. That trust fund would stay intact. Edith's wishes would be respected. Our daughter's future would remain protected. As I looked out at the backyard again and saw my daughters laughing, their hair wet and shining in the sun, I felt something solid and unwavering in my chest. This was what mattered. No matter what came next, I was ready, just like I had been from the start.